If you walk through older neighborhoods in Haiti, you'll notice a very specific style of architecture. The original homes were often simple, single-story wooden structures with low fences. Crucially, they respected public space, leaving plenty of room for shared sidewalks. This physical openness reflected a shared cultural mindset. For generations, a crisis in a Haitian neighborhood was treated as a collective problem. Because environmental and economic issues affected everyone in the area, neighbors came together to solve them. Today, that dynamic has vanished. Wealthy homeowners now construct imposing, fortress-like concrete walls right up to the edge of the street. They stock multiple stories reinforced with heavy metal barriers, eliminating the space once reserved for pedestrians. As national instability rose, Haiti's elites stopped viewing neighborhood problems as shared responsibilities. Instead of fixing the community, they attempted to literally wall themselves off from a failing state. But there is a fatal flaw in this strategy. By entirely disconnecting from the public system, you inadvertently guarantee the destruction of your own safety. It creates a cycle of false self-preservation, a survival strategy that prioritizes short-term personal barriers over the long-term stability of the country. Attempting to insulate yourself from society doesn't actually stop the state from collapsing. It merely accelerates the timeline until that collapse inevitably breaches the walls. You can see the physical consequences of this isolation in the very materials used to build these fortresses. Homeowners routinely skip basic soil inspections and use substandard cinder blocks mixed with too little cement and salt-heavy beach sand. That salt immediately eats away at the paint and corrodes the internal metal. When it rains, the walls degrade rapidly, eventually buckling under the crushing weight of multiple floors stacked on foundations meant for a single story. The government actually tried to address this hazard. Under the late President René Préval, the state launched an initiative requiring residents to respect property setbacks. The goal was to reclaim street space, to build public sidewalks, plant trees, and install lighting. But in affluent neighborhoods like Turgeot, wealthy homeowners refuse to move. They actively blot the state workers to protect their illegal, extended property lines, and they successfully halted the public works project entirely. By prioritizing their private property lines over communal infrastructure, these residents physically engineered the chaotic, impenetrable layout of modern Haitian neighborhoods. This pattern of bypassing the state quickly moved from housing to basic infrastructure. As public roads deteriorated, the upper class didn't demand they be paved. They simply upgraded to G-Wagons and Range Rovers to drive over the potholes. When the national power grid failed, they imported private generators. As fuel blockades made those generators difficult to run, they transitioned to installing private solar setups and massive battery banks. During fuel shortages, the general public is left paralyzed, waiting in chaotic lines with empty canisters. Meanwhile, the wealthy secure private supply chains to keep their personal enterprises running. As public hospitals collapsed, they moved to private clinics. When public schools failed, their children were shipped to overseas boarding schools. In a functional society, elite capital and political influence act as a feedback loop, the primary force demanding that public systems actually work. But when those resources are diverted into this private loop, the connection to the state is severed. This withdrawal changed the nature of political influence. Influence was no longer used to demand broad stability. It was spent on individual politicians to secure exclusive access and no-bid contracts. The public sector was starved of its most powerful advocates. Severing this tie to public accountability systematically removes the very pressure required to make a state function. As the public sector collapsed, street violence surged. Initially, crime syndicates relied on revolvers and pistols. The wealthy responded by adding basic ballistic protection to their vehicles. Then the armed groups evolved. They started carrying high-powered rifles, and the elites countered by adding even heavier military-grade armor to their SUVs. This chart shows the terminal trajectory of that race. When armed groups introduced armor-piercing rounds, the threat levels steeply overtook private armor capabilities. There is a hard mathematical limit to how much steel you can bolt onto a passenger car. You cannot win a security race against a collapsing society through private purchases. Eventually, the scale of the violence outpaces any individual's checkbook. The consequences of this strategy have now fully materialized. Those poorly built, chaotic neighborhoods that the wealthy kept isolated, like Turgeot, have been entirely overrun by armed gangs. The elites who broke zoning laws to build their fortress homes are now completely unable to safely approach those very same houses. The failure of their isolation is now physical. When civil conflict makes ground travel impossible and local clinics inaccessible, their only remaining workaround is to be airlifted out of the country entirely for basic medical care. The trap of false self-preservation proves a harsh reality. You cannot build a private paradise inside a public nightmare. Ultimately, true self-preservation requires a commitment to preserving the community.